The story of the thin general. Once upon a time there was a strong and healthy lumberjack. He usually held the axe and hammer loosely in his hands, so he had to hire a blacksmith to make it bigger with two spread hands to make it fit. The tree was as big as a person's body, and he only needed 4 blows to finish it. As for the old trees as big as a buffalo wheel, a spade or a winch, he can cut a few dozen pieces a day. Calculating the amount of wood he has collected since the day he first learned to carry an axe into the forest until now, is enough to build houses for 3 villages, 7 hamlets, 9 or 10 temples and shrines. But his and his wife's house only fits a bed and a mat. The house was so low that when he went in or out, his head touched the roof and his shoulders touched the rafters. Because his family is so poor and his wife is often sick, he has to sell whatever wood he can cheap to buy medicine for his wife and rice for himself. That's why the wife often complains, "Even if I cut down all the wood in the forest, it still wouldn't be enough to make a 3-room house." The woodsman also knows that his life cannot avoid his wife's worries. But there is no way to escape the situation where breakfast takes care of dinner. When his wife was 7 months pregnant, the lumberjack went to cut wood and built a bed for his wife. The tree was not big, he had only cut it 3 times with the hammer and it was already moving and about to fall. Unfortunately, a strong wind blew and the tree fell in the opposite direction. The lumberjack couldn't avoid it in time, and both his arms were crushed by the wood. So everything falls on the sick, pregnant wife. She ran from one end of the village to another to borrow money to support her husband. But you who are poor have nothing, and those who have wealth do not love the poor. The wife of a forest worshipper must go to the river to catch mussels to feed her husband a meal of porridge and vegetables. The river water was quite deep, she had to soak in the water all day to catch a meal of mussels. One day, it rained heavily at the source. She was rolling in the middle of the river when the source water came and swept her away. Luckily, she was able to catch a banana tree with its roots floating in the middle of the stream to escape death, but when she got home, she gave birth. The lumberjack's family was even more miserable. The husband couldn't do anything, the wife was seriously ill, and the son was born prematurely and could never get enough breast milk. The boy did not die, but as he grew older, he became thinner and thinner. Until he was 17 years old, his body was as skinny as a stick, his bones were covered in leather, and his knees were bigger than his thighs. When sitting, my knees are higher than my shoulders, the hair on my head is as thin as the hair on my legs, my body is loose, and once I sit down I don't want to stand up. The lumberjack and his wife love their child, so even though their family is poor, they don't force them to do anything. They named their child Skinny. One day, Skinny took a fishing rod to the yard and sat under a fig tree fishing. The day the fish bit, I had just sat down and caught several big fish. Having been hungry for a long time, when I saw some fresh and delicious fish, I immediately took firewood and built a fire under the fig tree to grill the fish to eat. At that time, the sun was halfway up, the strong wind blew the shadow of the fire into the river. A small fish in the water jumped up to look, and was caught by a kingfisher lurking in the tree. Have firewood nearby, Skinny throws the bird. The bird flew away and dropped the fish, which fell back into the river. The next morning, I took the rod and went back to the old place to fish, but as soon as I arrived, I saw someone had placed a grilled fish as big as my calf and a tray under the tree. Rice. The smell of fresh fish and hot rice was so fragrant. Even though I didn't know who it was from, I had never had such a delicious meal since I was a child, so Jian forgot to fish and sat down to eat all the grilled fish and fried rice in one go. After eating, I scooped up water to drink when I heard someone in the middle of the river say, "You have eaten all the rice and all the fish, so I have returned the favor." Skinny looked out in bewilderment and saw something strange, an object with the upper half of it is a human, the lower half is a fish rising from the water in the middle of the river and saying, "I am the water god. Yesterday my son was out playing and saw a fire shining down. He jumped up to look and was caught by a ferocious bird. Thanks to you beating that evil bird, my child escaped death. Now I'm repaying the favor. When you get out of here, you'll know." Skinny girl ran to the shore, her head touched a fig tree, the fig tree twisted to one side. A strange power has made Skinny become 10,000 times stronger. I got fat, my flesh became taut, my eyes were bright, my arms and legs were stiff and wouldn't sink, my hair was as thick and hard as bamboo roots. The skinny girl ran all the way home. Overjoyed, she danced and cheered, then grabbed her father's axe to slash east, west, left, and right. The axe is so heavy, but I hold it as light as kitchen chopsticks. My father's axe is too small for me now. So I had to forge an axe blade as big as 4 spread hands to fit it. Then, every day, Jock carried an axe into the forest to chop wood to feed his parents. That year the king built many palaces. The king hired many lumberjacks to cut wood. Skinny asked to join the workers. With that strength and big axe blade, every day I don't know how much ironwood, bamboo wood, ebony wood, each tree is as big as a hot rod or a squeegee. But seeing that Skinny was young, the lumberjacks bullied him, they sat down to play, or went into the shade to sleep for a day, then took the wood that Skinny had sold and divided it among themselves, only giving Skinny a small portion. So Zay was 10 times better at cutting wood than his father, but still could not feed his parents. After renting the wood, the king built a temple. The temple is full of precious wood. The main pillars are as big as a hot rod. The other pillars are as big as a sledge. The horizontal and vertical beams are dozens of arms' length long, so big that some people can't hug them. After erecting the column and rafters, the beam was bigger than a buffalo wheel, assembled from 5 ironwood trees, and was more than 20 spans long, so all the workers' guilds and even the soldiers in the court who came out to help were still unable to do so. How to place it on the truss mount? The Workers' Guild sent people to pray for Jock. Finn came to the king to ask for a meal. The king ordered to cook a barrel of plain rice, a cauldron of soup and a boiled goat. After eating, Skinny picked up one end of the pole and placed it on the pole. After placing one side, Gan picked up the other side on his shoulder and followed the stone steps to place it on top. The beam was so big, 20 fathoms long, that the whole ward of soldiers struggled to put it on for a whole month, but Zay could only finish chewing the betel nut. The king rewarded Jock with 3 carts of rice, 7 jars of fish sauce and 9 goats. Finn brought all these things home to support his parents. The king had a princess with a beautiful face like a painting and skin as white as ivory. Many princes and kings from all over the world came to ask to be his wife. In front of so many high-ranking, equally wealthy people, the king didn't know who to marry, and the princess didn't know who to choose. But the other kings and princes were afraid of losing their share, so they also brought troops to attack and steal the princess. The country is filled with smoke and fire. There are enemies everywhere. The east enemy, the west enemy, the enemy shouting in the south, the enemy rampaging in the north. The king was frantic, the military officials were all trembling with fear, everyone took their wives and children to hide, but no one dared to go out to fight the enemy. Finn immediately carried his axe into the forest and picked up an ironwood tree as big as a saw, 9 fathoms long, and carried it to fight the enemy. Skinny's legs are now as strong as an elephant's. Wherever he goes, the enemy runs away. Finn walked from south to north, carried a stick and rushed straight into the middle of the enemy army to strike. Gay's wooden tree fell with one blow, thousands of enemy soldiers died. The corpses of the enemy died like buffaloes. Those who were not yet dead bowed to the green to ask for forgiveness. Those who were far away all had their heads down and ran away. When he defeated the enemies in the south and the north, the enemies in the east and west shuddered. Afraid of Guy's strange health, they all led each other back to the country. Skinny had great merit. The king took him back to marry the princess, and made him a general. When the kings and young men of all countries heard that the woodsman's son had married the princess, they were so angry that their faces broke, but fearing General Finn's power, no one dared to get involved. From then on, the lumberjack's family no longer suffered. Thank you for joining us for today's fairy tale. We hope these stories bring joy and meaning to your day. If you love our channel, please hit the subscribe button so you won't miss any exciting tales. Wishing you a good night and sweet dreams. See you in the next story.